Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul and I've got Stephen with me as well. So yes, a cracker. The season has come to an end, so plenty of things to talk about with the final, etc. We've also had All Blacks team namings. We've had the Wallabies being team names. We can start looking forward to the Rugby World Cup. Oh, there is so much to talk about, and so I'm going to bring in Mr. Stephen Harris, who let's be honest, has been keeping the New Zealand Sport Radio Facebook page alive with his content. How are you doing, sir?
Only just, Paul. Once again, privilege and a pleasure to be back on the show. In fact, good to be having the show. But we have kind of been on a life support, shall we say, lately. So hopefully, over the last couple of weeks or so, I've breathed a little bit of life back into the site.
Oh, and there's the little dagger into the back there. It's good to have the show, Paul. Get off your ass and do it. So yes, absolutely good to be back on and talking code. So, Colin, where were you at the weekend? What rugby delights did you get up to?
Well, listen, sometimes out of some not so good news ended up some sort of good news. I was supposed to head away down to the Hawke's Bay the weekend, but as we know, we had a bit of a weather system come through down on the east coast of the North Island. So the safe thing was stay in the 09 for the weekend, which meant I could head out to watch the Premier Women's Final on Saturday between College Rifles and Ponsonby. Absolutely fantastic game, and unfortunately for College Rifles, they came a cropper in the game that counted and managed to head over to university to get an interview, which I posted on NZ Sport Radio with Kurt Eklund, who played his 100th game for the university club. And boy, it's about 12 years in the making, given that he made his debut for that club back in 2011, I think it was. But with so much professional rugby happening these days, it's very rarely we see the pros going back to the amateur ranks, Paul.
Absolutely, he should have been doing what a couple of boys were doing this weekend for Waihi, which was Kurt Eklund's original club and the club that he played at during school, where we had Brad made got his 100th cap this weekend, and Midget got his 200th cap. So well done to both those boys. If you want to watch that game, I videoed it. It's over on the Waihi Rugby Club's YouTube page, so you can go and watch those two boys racking up their milestones. Waihi got their first win of the season in their penultimate game, in the game over Thames. So a good win for those two boys to celebrate those milestones.
Do we get a commentary with that live feed?
No, there isn't a commentary with that recording. No, sorry. It wasn't. Yeah, no, sorry. It wasn't a live feed. We didn't. It wasn't streamed, but yeah, we did send it out. And again, hat tip to all the refs who got out there this weekend, because boy oh boy, whilst it might have been nice and sunny up in 09, as my hairdresser told me this morning, when he was moving house down to Waihi, when he got here to move on Saturday, it was bucketing it down, and I did worry that we might have some drownings at the game. So well done to all the referees, linesmen, etc., managers of teams as well, all of them who turned out in some absolutely horrible weather these last couple of weekends and kept the game going for the players, because without those people, there is no game for the players to enjoy. So I did have to have a quick chat. Well, I didn't have to. I did have a quick chat with the referee before the game with Waihi to say, look, call those rucks early, because we don't need anyone drowning and dying. And he had a little chuckle there with that one. So yes, that was my so I did that, and then I also watched the final blood. So yeah, I watched it with a friend who came over. We as I found out when I went to the fridge to get a beer out, I only had one left, and so clearly we shifted through quite a few beers. So my recollection of the game isn't that great, and he also distracted me as well from paying full attention. So you're not going to get in-depth analysis from me about the game, unfortunately, folks. But Stephen, where were you watching it, and how did you? Were you more sober than I was, and were you able to concentrate more on the screen?
Well, yes, I had to sort of spread myself around on Saturday. Obviously, headed out to Auckland Premier Women's final, and that was a pretty exciting game. Like I said previously, taking out a little bit of an upset Ponsonby Phillies, taking out the win. Some great games from a couple of Black Ferns, Eloise Blackwell and also Charmaine McMenamin, the two co-skippers. Certainly at that club level, boy, they're invaluable. So that was a great game, watched in front of a decent sort of crowd. Even the College Rifles Premier team got bumped to the number 2 ground. So they certainly highlighted women's rugby on the day. And of course, they headed over to University, who played a cracker of a game against Grammar Tech, one of the better games of the Auckland Club Comp, I believe, but managed, more importantly, to get an interview with Kurt Eklund. Once again, that's on the website, so you can have a look at that. And after getting all that done and having a little bit of a meal, I managed to get home for the game. Missed the first 20 minutes of it, but I rewatched it a little bit later, the first 20 minutes, just to see how it started. But boy, it was all about how the game started, and for the visitors, it was a very good start, Paul.
It was a very good start for the visitors, and there is and we've already had Dr. Wright say, I've just warmed up with some Bok death threats, abuse samples I've seen. A bit sad some people are like that. It's not just a bit sad, it's disgusting, I'm afraid, the abuse that the referee has received. I've seen some comments. I'm not going to share them and push and spread that further on here, but all I will say is it went as far as death threats, which is disgusting and beyond what any referee should have to put up with. The fact that from what I've seen, a lot of that has come from the Chiefs fans. And look, in the first, whatever it was that for when Anselette Brown comes up and tackles the player catching the ball, he goes in a fully upright position. No one's impeded him, no one's knocked him as he's got into that tackle. The player who's catching the ball hasn't dropped, or there is zero, as far as I can see, mitigation in the tackle whatsoever. And he goes in and there's head-on-head contact. And to me, well, that's a straight red every day of the week. I'm not sure how more clear-cut you can get a red card around tackling there than that one, because I say zero mitigation. So to suggest that the referee was biased towards the Crusaders when he doesn't red card your own player in the first 5 or so minutes, whenever it was, just beggars belief. These people whoever's putting this stuff out there are living in an alternate reality. This guy was not paid off by the Crusaders. That's absolute bollocks. His integrity from that point of view, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely clean. I just don't see that. Did he make mistakes? Probably. You can go as far as saying yes, but was he biased? No, absolutely not. And that's from my point of view. Steve.
Yeah, well, listen, you've hit it right on the head. The incident happened in the 10th minute of the game. He referred it to the TMO, and basically, I actually thought it would be upgraded to a red card. It went to Brendan Pickerel. The interesting thing about it, Paul, you've got two potential not potential, but 2 guys going to the World Cup, the likes of Angus Gardner, who is running the sideline, and I think Brendan Pickerel is heading off to the World Cup as a TMO. So for me, that was the interesting part. And yes, that was a mistake. So was the forward pass. That happened in real time. I couldn't believe when I saw it that it wasn't picked up in real time, the actual forward pass. I know I've just jumped ahead there. I suspect had that been a try, they would have gone back and looked at it and then found a forward pass. But I'm with you, Paul. There are so many little moments in this game that it could change at any time. And I think the Crusaders started, you know what, they got the referee on their side really, really early by just holding the ball. And boy, the guy that stood up in those opening 20 minutes, and boy, they use him well, and he's 140 kgs, is Tamaiti Williams, and the number of carries that he had in that initial opening stanza was pretty impressive. And unfortunately, during that period, I think the Chiefs actually lost the referee. But you know what, they did manage to actually stay in the fight and then hit back with an absolutely brilliantly well taken try themselves. So it's not as if they were totally out of this game because of the official.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was they were in this game, and as you say, some lovely play amongst other things. I'm trying to remember remind myself of the try score. I think it's 20 to 25 at the end of the day. So this game was in the balance the whole way, especially as there was a kick after the whistle to close it out. It was a 2-point game in the last 5 minutes. So this game was really close the whole way through this one. And a player that we will talk about when it comes to selection issues is Sean Stevenson, who took that try very well. I would say my recollections aren't great, so I'm not going to go in. I can't go into with a lot of details, but as you say, the Chiefs lost the referee, 3 yellow cards. Shows you that you've got to manage yourself better than that.
Exactly, and they got to halftime 15-10. Yep, they'd had a couple of yellow cards, but if you were looking at that at the halftime, who would have been the happier of the coaching staff? I'd probably say the Chiefs were probably the happier, knowing that the Crusaders had quite a bit of the ball, that the Chiefs' discipline wasn't as good as it could have been, and then all of a sudden they come straight out after halftime, and bang, 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 they score a try to Narawa, which is a brilliantly constructed try as well from a set piece. Let's not shy away from that one. That was so well put together. They set piece scrum, solid scrum, went to the right hand side. Beautiful little inside pass from Nankiville, I think it was, to Stevenson, who basically has got that much gas. He's able to put Narawa in such a good position, and with the sweetest of timing, send Narawa away for a try. It was so well constructed. There was even talk about maybe possible forward passes in there, but I looked at those passes, and they certainly weren't clear and obvious, Paul. And the try was scored. Step up, Damien McKenzie with the conversion. A few minutes later, they kick a penalty, and they're looking really, really good. I thought they would actually pull away, but of course another controversial moment came upon us once again. Very good set piece play, but unfortunately, when you score a try, they probably look at everything. If a try wasn't scored, they probably don't look at the fact that Damien McKenzie started his run a little bit earlier. And from there on out, once again, the Crusaders, they were the ones actually struggling to actually stay in this game. But they're such a good side, Paul. They find a way. And that's exactly what they did going into that last 15 minutes.
Yep, absolutely. They found the way, and as they have done for the past 7 years now, it is on these things. So yes. And Razor finishes off with essentially a near perfect record as a Super Rugby coach. Only that one Super Rugby Aotearoa competition that I got the right one that they didn't pick up in there. So yes, a fantastic finish for him and for a bunch of other players who are leaving for the Crusaders, definitely.
Oh, it's crazy. Something like 14 titles, 7 in a row to Robertson. It's absolutely nuts. Paul, would be remiss of us just to sort of mention some guys that, either enhanced their reputations in that game. Obviously, the All Black team was announced before, but I thought a couple of players that just absolutely enhanced their reputation. One, Tamaiti Williams. Wow. He, named in the All Blacks over a week ago. I thought he enhanced his reputation. Cody Taylor, probably the best game I've seen from Cody for a while, although there's a little bit of concern, a couple of overthrown lineouts, and that was from Takiaho as well. I don't know if you can give any more superlatives to Sam Whitelock. Obviously, he is Mr. Lineout, and he's a key part of this team. I thought Scott Barrett was very good, and once again Christian Leo Willie and Havili Taitui. Havili Taitui, well, you kind of forget that he's a Tongan international as well. So even though he's part of that Crusaders stable, it just shows you the talent that they've got there. And also in the Chiefs, obviously Stevenson and Narawa. Wow, these guys are putting some serious pressure on the All Black coaching staff, I've got to say, Paul, and they were really good as well. And I thought both the halves were pretty good as well. Both had their moments, D-Mac and both Richie Moanga. And Richie Moanga, like his coach, also signs off with 7 titles as well. Just absolutely staggering. And I mean to say, I'm a Blues supporter, but it's kind of begrudging. You can't begrudge them taking all those titles. But Paul,
well, you can begrudge them taking all the titles, but you've got to tip your hat, say that they're the ability to have done so, and to have kept that level of consistency. Look, corrections corner. Thank you, Simon Hughes. Super Rugby Trans Tasman was the only one they did not pick up. As in the Crusaders, the Crusaders did win the Super Rugby out the one. I got the wrong way around. Sorry, guys, on that one. So yes. The couple of things then from actually you kind of touched on here, a bit like by Dylan Clever on the bounce, the email he sends out, and he points out that Jeff Wilson talking about the fact that when the Crusaders are good, New Zealand rugby or the All Blacks tend to not be good. Actually, it's bad for the All Blacks. And he asked 2 questions, which I think is kind of muddy. Should it even matter? Well, no, it doesn't matter really. But is it a failing of Super Rugby that we still tend to view it through this prism of All Black success? And I would go, yes, exactly. I think that's one of the things that hangs over this one when you've got the All Blacks head coach coming out pre-game going, "Oh, we wouldn't be playing Sam Whitelock. I don't think he's fit to play." And then he gets trotted out and plays, and as you say, plays a key part in the final as well. Perhaps the All Blacks head coach should keep his trap shut about that. But also, to be seeing this as again about the All Blacks rather than about the actual game, about winning Super Rugby, is a failing for Super Rugby, and something that it does need to improve and get its and get the focus away from.
Oh, but Paul, listen, throughout history, there have been teams that have dominated their international jerseys. I think back to that Auckland team of the 80s. That was pretty much a stacked Auckland team, plus a couple. You can think back to the All Black team of probably 99, 2000. That once again, that was almost entirely a Canterbury and Crusaders side. You look at the current Irish team at the moment. I think they've got something like about 13 Leinster players that are part of that. The Irish, usually the Irish, to playing 23, sometimes even more. It's not such a bad thing because they do have those combinations. I just think it's up to the other teams to basically get it together. I think one of the successes for the Crusaders, I suspect, and just talking to a few people in the know, I've got a couple of contacts down that way, and the real big underlying thing, boy, these players are really in contact with their people. They play for their people. They play for their supporters, and the feeling is mutual, and it's very close. And it really has got. I know these franchises are called clubs, but I just suspect with the Crusaders, they really are in essence a club. And sometimes you get that out of English football, Paul. You would have experienced it with English rugby teams. Coming from a club like Exeter, that club to that town just means everything. And I suspect there's a lot of that down in Christchurch, where the biggest cities here in Auckland. I don't know what the population of Auckland is these days, but I'm pretty sure it's over 1 million, sort of thing. Like half the city probably wouldn't give a continental about rugby, half, and then a quarter of it are probably Warriors supporters, and the other quarter are rugby supporters. So there's a little somewhere in there. There's a little bit of that as well. So probably culture is what I'm trying to say, Paul. But it's just amazing. Like hard to stomach if you follow one of the other teams around the country. But yeah, amazing.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the things that the Crusaders have got right is the pathways within through Canterbury and through Tasman, which means the majority of the players that they select into the Crusaders senior team have been in that academy, have been around and understand what the culture is coming in to that. Also, when you remember when Rennie Ranger went down there to as injury cover pre-season, and he was shocked by the level of detail that was going on. So it's not just there is that so it is culture, but also that culture of excellence, that culture of knowing all the details and going that extra yard is there. Not just about culture, about connection with your local player base or local population base. But if if most of your players come from where the team is from, you're going to get that connection anyway as well.
Yeah, their biggest loss, Paul, may necessarily not be the players, the experienced players that they're losing in terms of Moanga, in terms of Whitelock. Their biggest loss actually could be Razor himself. Because he just seems to have a way of understanding and knowing these players. I heard a very interesting interview with Justin Marshall, and Marshy was actually saying that even when he was playing, he used to take notes. He'd basically take notes in terms of what the coaches were saying and come up with ideas himself. So here's a guy who was basically, he probably had his path lined up while he was actually playing rugby, Paul.
Yep. And they've and of course they're replacing him with is it Mark Jones that's coming in as the
Rob
Penny is the new head coach down there. A little bit surprised by Matt Todd coming in, because I'm trying to wonder how much experience he's got of coaching. But then I guess he's been out of the game playing for a little while, so must have been doing some sort of coaching in that. But yeah, interesting that Penny's coming in to take it on. Look, he's obviously got experience of Super Rugby coaching, as he's been part of the Waratahs over there until he was let down by really the kind of the board there around how much he was allowed to sort of spend on players, how he could keep players.
Really interesting point I just want to touch on, and once again, this is through my contact in Christchurch. He's the biggest Crusaders supporters ever. He goes to their trainings and watches their trainings, so he has a tight relationship. He actually said something that resonated with me. He said, listen, even though that Carter and the likes of McCaw were great players, great All Blacks, they were sort of guys that never really resonated with the people down there, because on a lot of occasions they were either injured or basically the All Black coaches at the time had them cotton-wooled for etc. And they didn't really mingle a lot with the actual supporters and the supporters club down there. But you know, the players of a certain vintage that do mingle with their supporters, with their people. Matt Todd is actually one of them. Of course, Scott Robertson, and another one of them. And I think that just means so much to a support base when you can go in and have a good chat to these guys and talk about anything. You know, even to the point like the contact that I've got in Christchurch. I don't think you'll mind me saying this, but Jack Goodhue bought him a season ticket for over 4 seasons. Which is just, who does that, Paul?
So yeah, I mean, my only thought about as Simon points out, look, the Penny's been at Munster, New South Wales, of the Waratahs, also over in Japan as well. I guess my only concern, only just thought is that if you look at the history of how the Crusaders have brought their head coaches in, they've always been in the setup at the time. All right, so Razor was head coach of Canterbury and came through, whereas Penny left in 2011. So it's been a while since he's been around. Now I don't know what he's been up to since he left the Waratahs in 21. Obviously with COVID and stuff, maybe he's been stuck here, maybe he's been kind of knocking around the scene there. But yeah, it has been a while since he's been part of the setup down there in that area. So let's just hope that being away hasn't dulled him when he does come back in and he's got plenty of support from from coaches who are existing there. So there is the continuity, but historically they've had more continuity than that. But then again, times change. Razor, what is it, 7 years now? So the professional rugby landscape is different than it was even when they put Razor in. Never mind Blackadder before him, which was even longer ago. So yeah. It's going to be interesting then. As obviously, Clayton McMillan still will be around. Actually, talking about coaches, Clayton McMillan will still be around at the Chiefs. They're the most stable coaching setup in that we've got. We still don't know who the Blues head coach is going to be next year. I have heard Vern Cotter's name being knocked around, so we'll see if he gets it. Obviously, he's got international experience, but again, lacks that local recent experience. And we saw that with Gatland. Having good international experience doesn't always relate straight into good Super Rugby experience if you haven't had the local experience recently. Obviously, he'd been out of the game for over a decade, out of the New Zealand game for over a decade. Perhaps for that. So it'll be interesting. Also, I do remember Vern Cotter taking the Scottish team on a pre-World Cup kind of team bonding thing and having them kill rabbits with their bare hands. So interesting one there. He's got a bit of an interesting background, has Vern Cotter. Stephen, how do you feel like getting taken off into the wilds of the New Zealand bush and told, "Here's a rabbit. This is your dinner"?
Yeah, that's pretty random. I can, if it was part of a survival skills course, I probably get it. You've basically got to catch something for dinner. But just wandering off into the bush somewhere to kill rabbits, I'm pretty sure there might have been a little bit more of a story behind that, Paul. I'm hoping there is. Interesting that you do mention Vern Cotter, because I've already heard stories about maybe a potential signing, a kid by the name of Armandale, who plays for Clermont, who's I think he's New Zealand born Samoan, quite a big lot, over 2 meters, as part of the Clermont squad at the moment. So maybe he's heading back to New Zealand. So just potentially rumours at this stage, but given the Blues have got upwards, I think, of probably about 9 players, I think, leaving the franchise, there's certainly a lot of gaps to fill.
Yeah, I think it's post Rugby World Cup, and so you do get a lot of you naturally get a lot of turnovers. Talking of other turnover, though, down in the Hurricanes, Clark Laidlaw is going to be the new head coach down there. That's an interesting one for me. Being coming from sevens, I'm coming into 15s. I'm not sure he's ever been head coach of a 15s team. The transition we've seen a similar transition in the women's game with and I've gone totally blank as the Blackburn Sevens head coach that came across Alan Bunting, who did well with the Chiefs Manawa. I've got that right. Anyway, the women's Chiefs team, and then has gone on to take over. Actually, I think he assisted, didn't he? Part of the Black Ferns at the Rugby World Cup, and then has now gone on full time there. So he is interesting. So look, it's something that is happening. at the moment, occasionally. So your thoughts on Clark Laidlaw? A bit of an unknown quantity, I would say.
Yeah, well, we're sort of getting a little bit of a bite-sized preview at the moment because he's got the New Zealand under-20s that are currently in South Africa at the minute. He's got a big job ahead of him because they just managed to scrape through. I'm sure you want to touch on that tournament briefly. So we'll get a little bit more of his style as that tournament unfolds, shall we say?
Yep. And then down in at the Highlanders, I've gone blank as to what's going on with them down there as head coach. But so actually, no, they've got actually they've got continuity, haven't they, down there? So with their head coach, so not the coaching change down there. But say the one that's still up in the air is the Blues, and we'll see what happens in that space.
I was about to say, Paul, the only news we've really heard out of the Highlanders from recent times, I do know through a contact they had a pretty serious play at Mark Talia, who's just re-signed with the Blues in recent days. So that's a real plus for the Blues. But the word is that Joseph Ratamaivuku Nitkins is heading to the Southern franchise.
Yeah, that one doesn't surprise me, to be honest. He hasn't got many opportunities at the Blues, with cover at fullback, which I think is where he would expect to be playing. The kid's got a big left boot.
Sam Gilbert
No, I mean at the Blues. Obviously,
yes. O'Sullivan.
Yeah, Zion O'Sullivan. Back there, you've also got Ben Brown's going overseas, isn't he? But yeah, you'd think that Zon is the next 15 jersey. So you've got to say, I'm not surprised that Neekins has headed south there because of the to get more game time opportunity with that one. Simon says, who is the next coach for Moana Pacifica? Yep, absolutely nothing on the grapevine so far that I've heard on that one. Stephen, you had any rumours on which direction Moana might take?
Yeah, not a lot of rumour going around. I know maybe our best contact might be friend of the show, Boa Arthur, who seems to have an ear close to the ground, given that there's a few of the Moana boys who you'll probably see feature for the Manukau Rovers rugby team in Auckland here over the next few weeks.
Yep. So we'll see we'll see what news we get on that one. So yeah, funny, interesting that the two sides based out of Auckland. Sorry, not the capital. That's wrong wording there. Are the two that haven't yet named their head coaches for next year. And when you think about how far out signing players happens, that needs to be done pretty damn quick, put bluntly, so that otherwise they'll end up being underprepared for next season. So shall we have a look at those All Black squads then?
Yes, I think we should. Just before we do, speaking of coaches, I must mention congratulations to former Centurion and 100-game plus player Ross Wright, the Northland Loosehead prop, who's been promoted to assistant coach of the Northland NPC team for 2023, and also Matt Ralston, who's a former Thames Valley player. You can't miss him. He's only 6'9". I suggested to Matt maybe carry your boots just in case they have a locking crisis at Northland. So he's probably only about 5 years out of the game, but's got a very big reputation as a technical coach. So he joins the Northern group of coaches. But good to see. Sorry, I had to get that in.
That's fine. Yeah.
But no, it looks like they've got their team their coaching staff all set, obviously, along with John Leslie, who was announced as the head coach a few weeks back.
Yep. Nocturnal Right says, question, what is the pay structure for super players? Are there different bands? Yes, there are different bands. Is what I can say. What is the structure? I can't tell you. I don't have that level of detail, but I do know that when a player picks up their first All Blacks cap, for example, they will automatically get a bump in salary. That's and get bonuses attached to that as well. So, plus we also know that for big players such as an RTS or a for example, or a Benji Marshall, when they come over from league, that there are allowed to be external add-ons onto their salaries as well, and that some private businessmen may chip in some extra cash to top up salaries for players. But that is on an exception basis. Rather than a regular basis on for the top ups, but no, it does show that there are definitely different bands on how the pay goes for Super Rugby players. So let's crack on into the All Black squad then, and we'll quickly run through it for those on the podcast listening. For those watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, you can obviously see I've got the list up on the screen now. But Cody Taylor, Dane Coles, Samasoni Takalaho are your hookers. Ethan DeGroot, Philip Chanel, now Nipolu Ulala, Ofatonga Fassi, Timothy Williams for the first time, Tyrrell Lomax are your props. Brody Retallick, Josh Lord, Sam Whitelock, Scott Barrett, Tupavai are your the engine room with Ari Surveyor, Dalton Papilehi, Luke Jacobson, Sam Kane, Sumapini, Finau again first time, and Shannon Frizzell are the loosies that are in there. Across the back line, Aaron Smith, Finley Christie, and Cam Roygard for the first time are the halfbacks, with Barrett, Bernard Barrett, Damon McKenzie, Richard Mwanga named as 10s. Clearly, a couple of those can be a bit more versatile than that. Anton Leonard Brown, Geordie Barrett, Rico Iwani, Braden Ennor, and Dallas McLeod for the first time are kind of the centres. Caleb Clark, Imoni Nawaya, who you mentioned earlier, Stephen, in there for the first time. Lester Nuku, Mark Talia, and Will Jordan. But Sean Stevenson is being added as injury cover for Mark Talia. So looking at those names, Nocturnal Rights goes, it says, surprising, mostly happy. Surprisingly, I'm most happy. It says, yep, some quibbles, but glad they dropped the Blues Lucies. Well, there we go. But looking at it, a few names there. Look, we got 1, 2, 3, you got 5 new caps coming in a Rugby World Cup year. Now, one of the things I think we talked about when it was announced that Foster wasn't going to be continuing as head coach after the Rugby World Cup was that he had 2 choices. One, continue his same vein of picking his tried and tested names, and the other one was go for broke, as it hadn't been going necessarily to plan, and basically just pick players on form. Now I think we can say that he hasn't gone down the second route with with that, but he has brought in a few new names to sprinkling in there, Steve.
Yeah, definitely the odd ones. We weren't expecting a lot of surprises, but we actually did get a surprise, and that surprise came in the form of Dallas McLeod. I didn't see that one coming, or did I see Samapini Finau being named in the team as well? I do believe maybe a couple of players got their names crossed out in the semi-final down in Christchurch, and that's from a very good source as well. 2 players who were in the original team pretty much got their names crossed out at the end of that particular game. So I just suspect you look through the rest of the tide. No surprise to Mighty Williams, a new All Black, but that's really not a surprise. He's made his way in through form. We've seen what beautiful soft skills he's got. He carries, hardly drops passes. So that was no surprise there. And of course, Imoni Narawa, who I must admit, he's been a little bit of a slow burn in terms of like for me, Paul. But boy, on Saturday night, he just, on the biggest stage, he pretty much showed what he's capable of and what he could do. It's probably nobody who's really unlucky. Probably maybe Jack Goodhue, but and maybe the likes of Hoskins Satutu. But outside those two or three, I think it's pretty much right, Paul.
That's right. Okay, there's a few names in here that I'm surprised at. I was a bit surprised at Josh Lord, purely because I'm not sure how much rugby he's had this year and what kind of state he's in. Because we haven't seen him much, so I'm surprised he was included. To be honest, from that point of view, Saipini Finau, again, that was a bit of a surprise, as you say. Players like Hoskins Satutu could. Or Peter Sarakula, Akira Iwani. There's a number of players who I thought were ahead of him and that have been ahead of him historically. So a bit surprised by that one. Finlay Christie ahead of Brad Webber, I think was a bit of a surprise as well. But we are nitpicking with that one. Dallas McLeod again ahead of players like Jack Goodhue, in fact, also Brain Ennor ahead of Jack Goodhue as well. In there, I thought I'm surprised that Dallas McLeod is ahead of Billy Proctor or ahead of Nankivell as well, even though I think Nankivell's heading overseas. So I'm a bit surprised at his inclusion in the All Blacks 15. And then into that back three, I think Caleb Clark has been very lucky to get in there. And interesting that Norawea is ahead of Stevenson, to be honest. But maybe they are looking at it and thinking, look, we've got Bowden Barrett, we've got Bray, we've got Dave McKenzie, we've got plenty of cover for 15. And they see Stevenson more as a 15 than a wing, and they wanted a winger in there. So I think it might be the fact that you've got, let's say, McKenzie, Bowden Barrett, Will Jordan, Geordie Barrett. You've got lots of players who can cover 15, which is Sean Stevenson's main strength. And maybe that it's more positional rather than what's the word I'm looking for? Rather than ability level that has that's caught him out there.
Yeah, listen, I don't see too many playing themselves out of this squad unless they somehow manage to have a bad run during the rugby championship. And I think if they take out the rugby championship, I think there's a good majority of the squad that can probably pack their bags. Although the two obvious ones that I think who would have been selected had they been there is Ethan Blackadder and David Havili. I think those two would have been lock-ins had they been available. So the interesting thing for me will be I can probably see 95% of this 90 to 95% of the squad being a lock-in Paul. I think the contentious ones are those wingers. Do you want to take two power style wingers in terms of Whaia Nuku and also Caleb Clark, or do you just want to take one power winger and then maybe look at Stevenson as a wing fullback option? I suppose that's the key for me. Listen, I hope somewhere over these next 3-4 games, if you include the Bledisloe Cup game, which is being played down in Dunedin, I would hope that they give Stevenson some opportunity in the next month or so.
Absolutely. I mean, look, there's the squad size is 33 and there's 36 names there. So at least 3 players are not going to be going on that one. You might remember, folks, that for the last Rugby World Cup, we did do an aeroplane kind of style, who's on the aeroplane. And we will put that together again for you over the next couple of weeks. I won't get to it. We'll see how we're doing for time. I don't think we've got time to go through and put it in all right now, but we'll put everyone either on the plane, at the airport, waiting at home, or on holiday. But as you say, look, for now, these are the players who have who were in possession of the jersey, as it were. So you've got to say, yeah, you're quite right. This is where your 33 will be coming from. You'd expect. Having a quick look at the All Blacks 15, then Ainsley, Ollie Jaeger, Mafileo, Numia, Ross, Amua, Riccatelli, Thompson, Arcoy, Strange, Walker-Leary, Harmon, Kiriwani, Karifi, Leo Willie, Suakula, Safoa, Fakatava, Weber, Brett Cameron. And there's a player who has a gap between All Blacks caps. Perifetta, Goodhue, Nankerville, Proctor, Sullivan, Gilbert, Lamb, Love, Nani Satoro, and Nariki. There. So any names there that you think have got a chance of stepping up and forcing their way? Anything?
Well, firstly, I think Nocturnal will be pretty happy because there are a lot of Highlanders in there, Paul. I've got to say, not really. Listen, unless there's an injury at hooker, Asafa Amua probably is a player that comes to mind. Once again, Brad Weber. To me, the likes of Christie and Roygard, they can only really play themselves out of the All Black side, and I think the selectors already know what Brad Weber can do. But really, outside that lot, I personally don't see anybody from that squad who will probably get a look in. I've got to mention the one obvious omission, which is Hoskins Satutu in neither the All Black side or the New Zealand 15 side. But according to the coach, he didn't answer his text. But really and truthfully, I just think at a time like that, I think the coach needs to actually talk to the player over the phone, because here's a guy who's been part of the All Black team for the last 3 or 4 seasons or so. To get news via text that you've been dropped, it just beggars belief. To be honest, Paul. So maybe there's a little bit going on behind the scenes, shall we say?
I think he's lost. I think Foster's definitely lost some of the dressing room. And yeah, Hoskins Tutu is one of these. Gone, okay, well, look, there's a new head coach coming in, a new regime. Clearly, I'm not part of the Rugby World Cup thinking, so therefore, sod him, and I'll just wait for the new guys to come in. I'm not actually going to be burning too many bridges by not replying to a guy who probably hasn't communicated with me very well over the past few years anyway. On that one. So yes. So the so I'm not surprised that. So yeah. Look, I think Foster's just a bit too much entitled. Too much entitlement from him there, and poor man management, which I think certain players have come out and supported him in the past, not Crusaders players, as we've said before. So he does have some of the dressing room on his side, but others, I can see why they'd be upset with him. A couple of players in here that I think possibly can, as you say, I think Hooker is tied up as far as the All Blacks is concerned, and I think so is the locks. The only place you can see a lock there is if Josh Lord isn't fit, in which case your Quinton Strangers or your Arcoy could or your Walker-Leary could come in there. But again, that's probably down to more injury or physical side than anything else. I think we're going to have prop injuries because we always have prop injuries. So I think the props should keep themselves fit. And then amongst the loosies, look, I mean, there is wherever you've got a new player. So you're basically Tamati Williams, Spini Fanau, Cam Rygaard, Dallas McLeod, and Moinawaya. They may arrive in camp, and the head coaches find out actually I can't work with this guy. So there is that opportunity, so I think the real opportunities of those are probably in the centres there, with your Goodhue, your Nankerville coming through. To be honest,
yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Josh Lord, because I kind of look at the locks on this squad. In this squad, I don't see Walker Leawedi or either Arcoy as All Black locks. We know Quinton Strange has been part of an All Black squad in the past. So hence you can see that Foster's being loyal to Josh Lord. Remember, they actually picked this guy. Was it last year or the year before? They took him on a tour overseas, but unfortunately he was injured a good part of last year. And we do know that he is an athlete. So, and I suspect they're going to give him some game time.
Okay, it's a bit like when they picked Shannon Frizzell from pretty much from nowhere. He got picked from pretty much from nowhere. As Knox and Rice said, Lord is a Foster project. Yes. So there is that one. But yeah, no. Look, I think in the centres to me is the one place where I think, or the way also that Brad Webber came from the All Blacks 15 and went straight into the All Blacks matchday squad during the November Test tour. I think there's still a possibility of him forcing his way in ahead of Finlay Christie there. So those are the two areas where I think we might there might be space. Otherwise, as I say, someone like Ruben Love, I just can't see there being them needing that fullback cover. So hence, I don't think he's going to make his way in. There might be a space for an AJ Lamb or something if Caleb Clark doesn't pull his socks up, but I doubt it personally. There, a international squad that you were impressed with though was one that wears yellow, and the Wallabies squad that I've gone. Eddie Jones obviously selected there. Just quickly just run through the names. And Alan Alatoa, we got Arnold, Fesler, Frost, Gibbon, Holloway, Hooper. So Michael and Tom, Litoa, McWright, Nonguru, Parecki, Samu, Skelton, Slipper, Tupu, Ulasi, and Valentini. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 debutants there, just amongst the forwards. Into the backs then, Cooper, Fiketti, Carter Gordon, Hodge, Ikatau, Korobetti, Longeran, Ryan, that is, McDermott, Marky Mark, I'm not going to bother. Sorry, folks. Perezi, Vunivalu, I think he's been lucky. White, Wright, and then 3 players down as utility. Now I don't know if they're utility between forwards and backs or not, but Donaldson, Kermi, and Pitesh. So another 4 debutants in the backs. That's 9 debutants in there. Plus they do have some rehab players, but 9 debutants in a World Cup year. He really has gone for his own team, hasn't he?
Oh, Paul, I'm so disappointed. I thought you were going to bust out Man Ngawatawasi, but never mind.
Thank you.
It's all good. Yeah, interesting. But what is good? There's still a core of experience there, and I'm sort of excited that guys like Marika Kurimbeti and Karevi Samu, and even the likes of Quade Cooper. Yeah, Quade he's been to a few World Cups, so he's got experience, and a fit Quade Cooper is a dangerous player, and he'll move this team around. Not so many newbies in the backs, but like you say, what did you say? 5 in the pack. That's the interesting one that you kind of look through. Fessler is a front rower, so he's pretty much a new. A new one for me. Matt Gibson, I don't know too much about, but just looking around, probably in terms of guys who may be unlucky to make the side, Harry Wilson, I don't see his name there, so he obviously missed out on the squad. But man, they're going to have a good 15-23 if you can put it on the paddock. And I like the addition of also Rory Arnold and Will Skelton. Boy, that gives them some real size in the middle row. We shouldn't forget back in, was it 2021, they beat the Springboks twice in the rugby championship, where they weren't expected to beat a battle hardened Springbok side coming off a serious victory against the Lions, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the Keir Barlow didn't get a call up, which after putting his hat in the ring. But I think playing in France and then having had zero basically contact with the Aussie setup to expect to go, hey, look, I'm available, please come get me, was a bit kind of asking a lot there. So the co-captains with Michael Hooper and James Slipper, two experienced players. I don't think there'll be any problems with those two co-captaining from that point of view as well. So all good, and it's going to be interesting to see how these guys react to Eddie Jones. Obviously, Tanilea Topu has been injured a lot this year, so hopefully he's back to full fitness, because you really want to see the best players in the world playing at the Rugby World Cup on that one.
Yeah, Paul, and I think they play the Springboks first up. If I stand to be corrected there.
So yes, the fixture list is there on the on the thing. So yeah, so first up against the Springboks, then they play Argentina, then New Zealand twice is their
If you're going to catch the Springboks, I think to catch them in the very first game is actually a good thing. So that'll be a really, really good gauge to see where they are. And boy, that game in Melbourne? That game against New Zealand, third game or third week of the Rugby Championship. Boy, I think that's going to be a cracker. Both teams would have had game time under their belt, and for the first time in a long time, I really cannot wait for a Wallaby All Black contest.
That first game is against the Springboks is at Loftus though, so it's at altitude in Pretoria. So yes, that's a tough one there on that one.
It's going to say, Paul, it might be tough for the South Africans as well, given that a lot of them play in Europe these days.
Well, there is that. Yes, that's true. Let's have a very quick look at the World Cup groups. Then something that I've there's been a lot of talk, obviously, about the world rankings and how lopsided the tournament is. So I thought I'd have a quick look at that. And if you look at the world rankings across the four pools, in Pool A, the sum total of all the world rankings is 57. In Pool C, it's 56, and in Pool D, it's 58. So it's actually very close across those, even though you have got second and third in Pool A there. And then you've got no other teams from the top five in the other pools. So clearly the other pools have got stronger teams all the way down there. But interesting that it's got the number of caps isn't that different. Where it is different is in Pool B, where it's 44 44 points of world ranking, which is 12 less than all the rest. So boy, oh boy, that Pool B is stacked there with the South Africa, Ireland, Scotland, Tonga, and then Romania as well. Romania, with ranked 19th in the world, is the when you think that New Zealand, Pool A, you've got Namibia at 21. Pool C, you've got Portugal at 16, and then Pool D, you've got Chile at 22. Yes, Romania are a tough one actually as a fifth team there. What the difference is, though, is around that standard deviation, and that shows you how spread the rankings are, and that's the highest number is for Pool A with New Zealand. Hence, you've got a couple of very, very, very high ranking and a couple very low ranking, relatively speaking.
Yeah. Where it is interesting for me, Paul, is how these coaches are going to manage their players, because if you basically look down the list, there's probably really a minnow in each group. But in terms of tier 2 nations, we know that Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji will be. They won't be cannon fodder, but we know that all those squads will have good players. So you'll definitely meet a physical contest. I would still expect the tier nation one sides to win, Paul, but boy, it wouldn't surprise me if we got some close contests in those respective groups.
I was asking in our chat as to where the surprises can be. Look, I mean, Pool A, clearly France and New Zealand are going to come through. Italy should come third. Look, they've only ever lost once to a tier 2 nation. That was Georgia recently. So I think they'll see off Uruguay and Namibia. If Italy lose to Uruguay, then and drop out of that third place, then they lose automatic qualification for the next Rugby World Cup. So it's massive for them to those 2 games against Uruguay and Namibia, particularly Uruguay, more so actually than the top games, because they know they're not going to win those. Into Pool B, you can you can't really see Scotland tripping up both Ireland and South Africa. They might trip up one of them, but that's where your one, where an obvious place of shock could happen is that Scotland could go through and either South Africa, the reigning champions, or Ireland, one ranked team in the world, get knocked out. But it's hard to see because those two, Ireland and South Africa, are so good. So I can see those going through.
No, listen, if Scotland and Tonga happen to go through, I think we'll probably get visited by Martians around about December. Space will land somewhere on Earth.
I think Tonga have got a very tough one there. Now, look, Tonga have got obviously all those players like Charles Piutau and Israel Folau coming back. But so it's going to be interesting to see how they go. Could they knock over Scotland? Could they get that third place in the pool and not? I mean, Scotland hasn't got a automatic qualification for the next World Cup. Again, I'm sorry, but Scotland are on the rise. They're in a good place right now. In previous years, maybe you'd say that, but I can't see it happening this time around. Pool C is where it gets fun, right? Wales, 9th in the world. Australia, 7th in the world. As Nocturnal writes, yes, there's a bit of a laugh at that, as those are top 2 teams in there. Wales has lost to Georgia recently, who are also in here. They've also got Fiji. And then Portugal, I think, unfortunately, going to be in a tough situation. But what this means is when Australia or Wales make it to the quarterfinals, they're not going to have rested their players at all because they just don't have any. They've got one easy game, whereas New Zealand can rest their players against Italy, Uruguay, and Namibia. Let's be blunt. They can put the second team out and go through. South Africa and Ireland have got depth. They can rest players against Tonga and still win it. Some players, not all of them, but some of them. But Wales and Australia have to play their first team essentially for 3 of those games. They're going to be knackered by quarterfinals, Stephen.
Yep. It's not going to be easy. Like I say, I kind of look at that Australian squad, and to me, on paper, it looks way stronger than either Wales or Fiji. But boy, if Fiji are, I'm not sure what to expect there. They've got a good squad on paper.
Yep. So again, there is the possibility here of a Fiji or a Georgia making it to the quarterfinals, but you've got to say Wales and Australia, history shows they should go through, even if current form, particularly from Wales, suggests they'll struggle. Pool D, look, England will go through comfortably here. The question is either Japan or Argentina. Samoa, I'm sorry, you might be the highest ranked Pacific Nations team, but you're coming up against some tough teams here. I can't see them tripping up both Japan and Argentina. Chile, wow, well done for getting here. Put bluntly, to the Rugby World Cup. You've made sure you've got yourselves past the USA and Canada, so you've done very well to get here. But boy, oh boy, you're not going to win a game. So yes, so either Japan or Argentina. Look, I guess again the upset here, or is it an upset if Samoa come third and Japan come fourth, and Japan don't get automatic qualification? I don't know if that's considered an upset or not. But one of those teams is going to be upset they haven't got automatic qualification. It could even be Argentina. Simon Hughes, I think Wales get back to normal around the Rugby World Cup. Look, something we've not had a chance to talk about and has happened. Look, you've got players like Justin Tipuric, Alwyn Jones, who have retired from international rugby 3-4 months out from the Rugby World Cup. Sorry, who retires from international rugby just before Rugby World Cup? That tells you that all is not happy in the Welsh camp. That Gatland has not got all these players on board. If players like that, who were selected for the Six Nations, are making themselves unavailable for the Rugby World Cup. It is not a happy camp. There is stuff going on there. For them to come good by the Rugby World Cup, stranger things have happened, but it's a quarterfinal for them is a major success for Wales. Our hour's up, Stephen.
Our hour is pretty much up. That'll be the timekeeper. In fact, we've actually gone over the hour. But just before we go, I just want to mention the under-20 World Cups are happening in South Africa at the moment. And the first round actually saw wins to Argentina, New Zealand, just by the 1 point over Wales. France, who looks so impressive in their big win over Japan. The team to beat England and Ireland fought out a tremendous draw. Watched the first half of that game before tiredness took over. And of course, Australia had to fight back from 40, had to fight down in their game, but they got the win over Fiji 46-37. And Georgia pushed South Africa all the way, but before South Africa took the win. But it's going to be interesting. This next lot of games happening this weekend, and the interesting one from a local piece is France taking on New Zealand. Boy, this is a big ask for this New Zealand team. They're not the biggest pack, and just looking at the French pack, you'd be confused if you thought it was their senior pack. That's how big they are. So that's probably the game of the round. Also, I'll be curious to see how Australia match up against Ireland. I also was going to mention some things going down in Fiji at the moment. A lot of turmoil going down in the Pacific Islands at the moment. But boy, maybe we can leave that for another show, Paul.
Yep, I'm unaware of that. So that sounds like another show. But yeah, you're right. Look, I mean, France, the only team that really got going in that first, or had it all their own way in that first round with 75 points. So yes, that's going to be a tough game for the Baby Blacks for them there. As you say, that Australia-Ireland game looks like a good one. Plus also Argentina, Georgia. Georgia have really stepped up in this under-20 category. So I think that could also be a cracking game between those two, with Argentina saw off Italy and Georgia went close against South Africa. So that could be a good one. There we go. Cool. Sorry.
Absolutely. And let's not forget that the French are, whilst we've had a couple of cancellations in and around COVID over the last few years, let's not forget they are the 2000. They were the previous champions as well, 2019 champions, but they were also the 2018 champions. So they're actually going for a three-peat at the under 20 division. So it probably tells you a lot about where their rugby is at the moment, Paul.
Yeah, those COVID cancellations mean it's not the same team either. It's new people. So that tells you about their pathways and their system rather than the individual players they've brought through. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you everyone who's joined us live. Thank you everyone who listens to the recording and watches the recording. And we'll try and be back next week where we sort out our aeroplane as to positioning our All Blacks as to who is on the plane, who is still having to fight for a ticket, and who can just already book their holidays, Hoskins to Tutu.